Okay, welcome everyone. And with her saying recording in progress, this will be shared on our Facebook page, on our website. So if later on, if you do want to chat, I just want to warn you that your face will be on the screen, which we love to have. We want to see your face, but just so you know where it's going to end up. I welcome all of you to this other Connections call. We still call it a call, even though it's been years since we've just been on the phone with each other. My name is Phoebe Morad. I'm Executive Director of Lutherans Restoring Creation, and I welcome you all. I am zooming in from Massachusetts, where the Massachusetts people still continue to care for the earth here. And I want to be regularly opening up our time together with land acknowledgement. However, because we're coming in from so many different lands, you can certainly write down your land acknowledgement in the chat. But as a group, Lutherans Restoring Creation is working on an acknowledgement together that has a bit more to do with acknowledging other ways of knowing, not just the land that we're on, but other ways of knowing. And one thing that I just wanted to say about that over the past, few months, I've been reading a lot and hearing a lot of references to wonderful writers like Aldo Leopold and Muir and, Walden Wood's readings. And a lot of times those writers are considered the first people that ever thought about this stuff. And I just want to challenge some of us to rethink that when I love some of those writers, I have to admit, but they weren't necessarily the first people that thought about this. And certainly well before Luther nailed anything to doors. It's not just Lutherans who are restoring creation. It just so happens that we happen to be a group of people within Lutheran churches and families that are coming together to do so tonight. So I welcome you all, and I'm really excited to share two wonderful voices tonight that I've been able to know and I wanted to share with all of you. The first is Lisa Swanson Faleide. There we go. Did I do that right? Maybe she'll do it right. And I got to know Lisa because she was one of the very courageous people who were part of the Pacific Lutheran Theological Seminary's inaugural Certificate in Climate Justice and Faith program this past year. But she already has been doing this work for a long time. So I'm going to hand it over to her, and she is going to share her perspectives and a little bit of your life story, right, Lisa?
Yep.
All right.
I'll do that. So I will start sharing my screen. And okay. How's that? You seeing it? Oh,
not yet.
Yeah, I forgot to hit share. There we go.
There we go.
Okay.
Now we see it. Thank you.
There's too many things to see at one time. Okay. How about that?
Perfect.
All right. Yes, I'm Lisa Swanson Faleide. It is I before E except in Faleide, if that helps you at all. It rhymes. And I want to thank Phoebe first off for everything that she does, but for inviting me tonight to speak, because it really helped me hone in on what it is that I think is important and necessary about a land ethic. I've been working on a theology of land, or a land ethic, for pretty much all my life, although I didn't know to call it that until more recently. And so here's a little bit about me and where that land ethic originates. You can see the picture here, which I will talk about in a moment. Okay. This is our Faleide farm and farmstead, sometimes called Windmill Farm for obvious reasons. We have a windmill that's been on the farm since the early days, perhaps not quite the homesteading days, but it was our CB handle. Windmill base was our CB handle way back in the day, that old technology of Citizens Band Radio. You can see another picture at the lower corner of the nice grasses, and it really is kind of the anchor to our farm place. My husband and I have lived on it for most of our 44 years of marriage, although the last few years I've lived in Fargo. Our business has been located in two places, back on the farm in Maddock, North Dakota, or outside of Maddock, North Dakota, and then also in Fargo. And so we've gone back and forth for many years. But now my 3 sons all live in the area and grandchildren also. And so I spend most of my time in Fargo. My husband goes back to the farm and does his mowing and work with the skid loader because that's what he enjoys. It's his recreation, among other things. Our farmstead includes 110 acres, including the farmstead, and 30 acres of cropland, which I'll show you a picture of in a little bit, and 50 acres of dedicated agrarian preserve, which includes wetlands, grasslands, fallow pasture, and a wildlife corridor, among other things. It has been in the family, in the Faleide family, who homesteaded it for 130 plus years, and also includes shelter belts and tree rows. And the agrarian preserve is the name that I came up with, really indicate a deliberate, what I now realize is kind of a living expression of our land ethic or theology. And sorry, I'm a little bit distracted by all the various things, and I'm trying to find my pointer to minimize the side column so that I can read everything I wrote. So I don't know if you can help with that, Phoebe. Probably not. I can't find it.
I'm sorry.
Wait here. Okay, well, I'll go on and see what I can do. It is a living expression of our land ethic and theology. And to the right in this picture on the top, you'll see a soybean field. Our nephew rents the land from us, the 30 acres, and he plants both corn and soybeans in rotation. And wish it wasn't so near to a monocropping, but that may change as the rent goes off this year. We may decide to put alfalfa on it or something else, or we may keep the arrangement the same. He is a conventional farmer. You'll see also in behind the crop in the front, there's a long tree row planted by my in-laws and shelter belts off to the right as well. And then in front, you'll see my long-legged shadow there. My legs aren't quite that long, of course. A big rock that was taken out of the field in order to make clearance for implements to go through without damage. And then the agrarian preserve, which is about 50 acres worth. I consider the whole farm an agrarian preserve, but my husband mostly designates it 50 acres. And it's mostly grass, some wetlands with lots of cattails, which absorb carbon. And that's kind of the whole reason for the agrarian preserve. It is kept as it is, as one interconnected living organism in order to sequester carbon and to act as a kind of an exchange for all the carbon offset, really a personal carbon offset for all the stuff we are spewing into the air by our travel and other things. And way in the distance, you can see 2 white marbles, and I'll explain a little bit about those later. Well, I guess I'm going to do it right now. These are satellite receiving stations, which are leased on leased land. Part of our agrarian preserve is leased by the company Planet. Originally, they were Planet Labs, and now Planet, and they have many microsatellites that are flying up there, and these are satellite receiving stations. And you can see a nice grassy view. There's more of the grassland on the lower left corner, and our dog, who has sadly passed, Portia, keeping watch over everything. So the reasons that we have satellite receiving stations on our property is because of my husband's business, satshot.com. We also operate under Agrarian Frontiers. Here you see him pointing to in Saturday Night Fever fashion with his finger in the air there, to the large graphic piece of art, really, that is a good example of the satellite imagery that he uses and analyzes for agricultural purposes and now also environmental monitoring. But this was displayed at the Guggenheim Museum in New York City, as he and I were both consultants on the Countryside project, or Countryside exhibition that, let's see, it was around the 20th of February in 2020 when it opened and closed 3 weeks later to be closed for several months and then reopened for the rest of the time. And I bring this up not only so you can get an idea of what our context is, but also to say that my interest in and training for theology and putting it together with ethics and culture were really instrumental in the project coordinator, who is the guy who conceived of the Countryside exhibition, Rem Koolhaas, a world famous architect. And we just happened to luck out on getting involved in it, but we talked about theology and that really piqued his interest. And so I was able to bring a flavor that probably nobody else in the project would have brought to it, and very happy for that. And here on the left, you can see 2 pictures of me from my recent graduation from Luther Seminary with a master's in systematic theology, well, a concentration in systematic theology, a Master of Arts. Here's our church where we've been members. Well, my husband's been member since he was born, and I've been a member since we got married. It is on the National Register of Historic Places, not only for its beauty and the care that all of the members have taken over the years to keep it and preserve it in all its beauty. And you can see the wonderful stained glass window there. And a pipe organ, which I have had the good fortune to play over many years, but also because it was the site of an early Norwegian American Synod assembly. They didn't call it quite that, but it was the Norwegian Synod in the early 1900s. So it had historic value for that reason also. So here is where, okay, now I hope I can read all this because part of it's covering up my screen, but what do rural churches have to do with a land ethic? Well, of course, some of that is obvious, but I think they are called to kind of a special calling in the formation of theological land ethics, rooted in community and founded on the gospel principle of neighbor love, because of their essential vocation and gift to the church. And here are some of the reasons. People who steward and make their living on the land experience little to no delineation between the family's principal vocation or work, paid or unpaid, and the daily rhythms of rural life. The rhythm of the planting, growing, harvesting, and fallow seasons. There, I cut myself off. It encompasses the entire community. Whether they farm or not, all rural people are affected by these rhythms in very real and temporal ways. The interconnectedness of people on the land and of all creation is obvious and ever present. God is felt quite readily, viscerally, and specifically, I don't think that's the word I have, through proximity to nature and appreciation for its wonders. And cooperation in all its forms is characteristic of rural communities, both the formal cooperatives that are everywhere in rural areas, and also cooperation that is everything from forming a congregation to the more formal cooperatives and just getting along in life. Cooperation is the order of the day. And also, land and natural resource stewardship is the default mode of most farm families, even if their practices don't always demonstrate this, which of course leaves opportunity. So what is the definition of ethics? I just took a class from Dr. Craig Nesson at Wartburg Seminary, and he's been doing this work for decades. He says, ethics is slowing down to think, which I love. That actually is me. I slow down to think all the time. And moral deliberation is really the community part of that. And he describes this as intentional, disciplined reflection together with the community on decisions we must make living our lives in the world. So let's take a breath and slow down to think just a little bit. I'm probably running out of time. I have no idea. I was going to time myself, but forgot. A land ethic is a philosophy or theoretical framework about how ethically humans should regard the land. And this term was coined by Aldo Leopold, at least that published that we know of. Certainly others may have called it the same or similar in a Sand County almanac. But for Christians, a land ethic or theology must include regard for the land as neighbor and folded into Jesus' commandment to love your neighbor as yourself. And as Dr. Nessen also pointed out, for Lutherans, Jesus Christ is the center of all theological ethics. So a theology of land begins with Jesus. In developing a theological land ethic, remember these things. There's more, of course, but that it be gospel-centered, that it be modeled in community, that it is a practice, not a goal or a mission statement, though those are fine, but this is a daily, hourly, it is a practice for all time. It is intergenerational, very important, creative, generative, and also embedded in worship, Christian education, and neighbor love inside and beyond the church threshold. So think about what your own land ethic might be, or your theology of land, and that of your faith community as well. This verse from Psalm 24 is a good prompt in thinking about such things. The earth is the Lord's and all that is in it, the world and those who live in it, for God has founded it on the seas and established it on the rivers. And then a quote from Wendell Berry, who is near sainthood in my book. There are no unsacred places, there are only sacred places and desecrated places. So our task as land ethicists or in developing a theology of land is to ensure that there are no desecrated places. Another quote from Wendell Berry that I'll end with, and perhaps other things will come up in the questions. Outdoors, we are confronted everywhere with, sorry, I can't read it. We see that as miraculous is not extraordinary, but the common mode of existence. It is our daily bread.
We can see it, Lisa. Thank you so much.
Wonders, of course.
Wonders.
Wonders.
Amen. And I'm so grateful we're recording this so that we can stop and think and go back and pause, as you mentioned. If you have thought of questions for Lisa, feel free to add them to the chat and start with the letter Q so I can go back and see them, but we're going to roll right into hearing from Jeff now. I want to thank Jeff for one thing, because he has been on our board for 3 years almost now. Jeff, I don't know, I've lost track of time, but you're also the program development chair, and we never had a program development committee before Jeff came along, and he said it would be a good idea. And then we were like, great, can you be the chair? So I know him and all the wonderful work he has done for Lutherans Restoring Creation. But in the meantime, he's also an incredible pastor, but also helps his Synod Green team. I think you call yourself something different, but created this treasure trove of resources. And yeah, I'm just excited to hear what you have to share with everybody else today. Over to you, Jeff. Oh, you're on mute though. It would be great to hear you speak if you're going to be a speaker. Huh? Okay.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Phoebe. I'll give you the $20 for saying good things about me a little later. So Lisa, can you share your screen again and put up that screen that you had about worship, rooted in worship and Christian education and community activity? That would be awesome, because that's a great segue into what I'm talking about, and a great time. I could spend the whole time asking Lisa questions, but what
I may not be able to do it quickly, so
while you're pulling that up,
okay.
I'll share a little bit about myself and who I am. What I'm going to share is what I call my eco-theography. And eco-theography, what the heck is that? Well, it's mixes ecology with theology and our biography. Our eco-theography is how we came to become ecologists while we are theologians at the same time. You are all eco-theologians. That's why you're here. I'm an eco-theologian, and we have an eco-theography, how we develop our understanding of that and where we're at. And for Lisa, right now, that is rooted in developing land ethics and making this a practical thing for us to use as people of God. So my eco-theography starts long before I was a pastor. It starts as I grew up at church camps and learned how creation is tied to our faith at the footsteps of Jack Swanson when I was a counselor at Lutheran Outdoor Ministry Center in Oregon, Illinois, when I was in college. After college, I was my first career was teaching, and I was a member at a church in Addison, Illinois. And the next steps in my eco-theography have to do with camera lenses and a Mennonite man. Camera lenses, because when I was on my honeymoon, I bought my first SLR camera, and photography has been part of who I am. And my photography is not about taking pictures of people, but taking pictures of creation. Animals, landscapes, those are my love, to bring attention to God's wonderful creation. And while this was happening, while I was developing these newfound joys, we were between pastors at my church, and a lay person who happened to be a Mennonite who was worshiping with us led worship one day, and he did a creation-focused worship, and I fell in love with it. It was very un-Lutheran, and when I went back and looked at it after seminary training, I'm like, ooh, I'm not sure we can use that, but bringing it into the worship space stuck with me. My eco-theography continues in seminary as and this is in the early 90s, I was looking and tying ecology to our faith and to theology long before it was a regular thing to do. There were certainly pioneers in the faith long before me, but I was doing it. And I was writing papers that many of my seminary professors had never seen as I was trying to make those connections. As soon as I became a pastor, I started to try to do creation-centered worship to bring that into the communities of faith that I was serving. I have served it'll be 25 years next February that I've been ordained. I have served all small town and rural congregations. I currently serve a parish we call Heart of Illinois Lutheran Parish, which is 2 congregations in Northern Illinois. The one where I'm sitting at right now, I'm sitting in the parsonage where I live, is literally in the midst of cornfields and windmills. There's huge windmills right outside my back door, and we are out in the middle of the rural country. I called the other one my urban church. It's in a town of Lee, Illinois, which has a population. I was a little shocked. It says on the sign now 300. I didn't think it was quite that large, but it is my metropolis. It's right in the center of this town of 300. So it's very rural as well. But as I have served in these rural settings, I have sought ways to bring up discussions around creation and, of course, around our current ecological crisis as we do so. And it became quickly evident to me, if I really want to engage the people in talking about creation and tying it to their faith, I need to do it not with education experiences, not with special programs, though those are good and it gets some people to them. It gets about 10% of your active worshipers, which of course are about 20 to 30% of your actual membership. Well, do the math, and you're only at 1 or 2% of your people that are being touched by it. If you want to touch the most lives, we need to be dealing with it in worship. So I was constantly seeking ways to bring creation into worship and to talk about these things, so that people would go home and be roasting the pastor over his views on creation, whether they thought they were too liberal or too conservative. And I'd love to remind people that conservationists are conservatives. And if we conserve the world. We are conservative, but we are looking at the good of the world. But I got frustrated for many years because there just wasn't much stuff out there, especially for those of us who are Lutheran. We're very liturgical. We like our liturgy. We feel comfortable doing that. And outside of a preaching message, which often became teaching, there wasn't a whole lot of meat to it. And so it became more like a sermon series. Then in 2011, hot off the presses while I was doing graduate work at LSTC, I picked up a copy of the book, Preaching Commentary on the Season of Creation, which was edited by 3 Lutheran theologians, and it's mostly Lutheran theologians who contributed to it, but by David Rhodes from Lutheran School of Theology in Chicago, by Paul Santemeyer from Union Seminary that's New York, and then by an Australian, Norman Hobble, who is a teacher and a pastor, has been for years in Australia. And you may know his name if you have a copy of the Green Bible. He was the editor of that. And so those 3 put together a preaching commentary and a lectionary for Season of Creation. And that was the first step for me in really finding a good way to bring creation into worship and foster conversations about how we relate to other parts of creation. And boy, I just loved everything you put out there, Lisa, because all that stuff comes up in the midst of worship. It's rooted in the fact that who is our neighbor? That question is not just about what people are our neighbors, but it's about what in creation is our neighbor. And we find, just like the lawyer found when the story of the Good Samaritan was told, that everybody is your neighbor. All of creation is our neighbor. We look at the rocks and the trees as our neighbors. So, which reminded me, my prior neighbors in this part of the land. I actually reside now on a part of the country that was not populated by indigenous people. They would travel in and out of this area, hunting and moving from other areas, because I'm in the midst of what was prairie, and they didn't necessarily settle here, but it was the hunting and traveling land for the Sauk and the Illini and the Fox tribes before the European settlers arrived. So I'm sorry I forgot that, Phoebe. But they are our neighbors as well. So Season of Creation, what is Season of Creation? I'm hoping that many of you are familiar with it, but Season of Creation, they have created a 4-week season that can fit into our regular church year, that has lessons to it, so that we can, just like we celebrate the Easter season or Advent season or Epiphany season, we can celebrate a season of creation. The unique thing about it, it can be celebrated. There's no exact time for it. It can be celebrated at different times during the year. But recently, over the last 3 to 4 years, it's now becoming a common stance to make the season of creation basically the month of September, the 4 weeks in September. I am going to share my screen right now so that you can see a little bit about what the season of creation looks like. Are you now seeing the slide that says season of creation?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Did you forget the extra share button?
I hit share. I don't know what happened to it. Let's try it again.
Share, and then you select the screen you want to share.
Just two.
And then hit share again.
Hit share.
I always forget that it's 3.
I got a grant access. I'm sorry.
Oh. I can make you host. Maybe that will help.
That'll help.
Uh-oh, he's going to take over the meeting, everybody.
Yeah, now you're in trouble.
Yeah.
I actually don't think it's I think it's
Oh, yeah.
It's not
Share
giving
your
me
screen. You have wonderful photographs.
an option to share my PDF reader. That's why what I'm trying to share. Okay, well, we can go to,
I can also share what we have on our website from your Northern Illinois team. Would you like that? Perhaps?
yeah, I'm gonna get to that in just a minute. Okay, I can pull it up in there we go. I'll try.
I'm just glad that the two people we asked from rural areas have enough bandwidth to you've been with us the whole time. It's amazing.
It's not showing the.
Nothing. You're going to have to dance, Jeff.
Gonna have to dance.
Gonna have to dance.
Now's it showing?
Surgical dances. Nope. Nothing.
Okay. So season of creation is a 4-week season. There's 4 weeks in year A. The 4 themes are Forest Sunday, Land Sunday, Wilderness Sunday, and River Sunday. And just like our regular lectionary has an Old Testament, a Psalm, an epistle lesson, and a gospel to it, they've assigned one of those for each one. There's a 4-week season for each of the years of our lectionary season. So right now we're in the midst of year C. So if you celebrate season of creation this year, the 4 recommended Sundays are Ocean Sunday, Animal Sunday, Storm Sunday, and Universe or Cosmos Sunday. The gospel lessons are from Luke, which this year our gospels are from Luke. So once I found this book, it helped me tremendously in my worship planning because it guided me as far as how to form worship around it. What was still lacking, however, this book was a preaching commentary, so it helped in the preaching and the lessons we chose, and gave us a guide just like our lectionary usually does. But what was lacking was the liturgy, and I would do searches online for liturgy, and there's lots of stuff out there, but most of it was not traditionally Lutheran. It was often what my congregations that I've served would all call New Age, which I'm pretty liberal, so that doesn't bother me, but most of the small and rural town congregations I've served liked their traditional liturgy, or at least the form of it. And some of the loosey-goosey stuff that they had, they didn't like as well. So what I have done over the last few years is pull the team together from our synod to create liturgy and resources so that celebrating season of creation, there is stuff available for congregations everywhere. Any of you who are involved in worship in your churches, pastors certainly know about this. Organists and music leaders know about Sundays and Seasons that the ELCA provides. Basically, we put together a Sundays and Seasons version of Season of Creation with hymn suggestions and ideas for things that you can do in your congregation, as well as preaching suggestions. And so we did that for each of the 3 years. We just completed our cycle this last year. And those resources, and here's a shameless plug, but I do it because I want you all celebrating season of creation and bringing those discussions into your worship. Those resources are available for free for anybody to use, and they're all downloadable from our Synod website. And Phoebe, feel free to share whatever you want to put up there as I talk about them. The website is very easy to remember. I'm from the Northern Illinois Synod, so the website is nisynod.org, and then you just have to do /creation. And what it will give you, Phoebe's putting that up there now, I'm seeing that. Here is the first page of the booklet that we did this year, which is called All Creatures Worship God Most High. Each of the years is named after one of the hymns from our hymnals. Jump forward to like page 10 or 11 or 12. Stop there, I guess. So here is a liturgy. Go back just one more page. At the front of it is a liturgy that you can use for the entire season. That includes a call to worship, a thanksgiving for baptism, confession, and forgiveness. The same things you would find in Sundays and seasons. They are rooted in the lessons for the day or for the season and on the themes of the season. It includes a hymn of praise, some hymn of praise options. It includes prayers of the day for each of those Sundays, again, that are rooted in the lessons. In fact, one of the people tuning in, Robert Franick, who is now a pastor in North Dakota, is online with us now. He was part of the team that helped put these together. So maybe we'll get a comment or two from him. Now, going further down, this is the general stuff. Each Sunday has its own section. Keep on going, keep on going. So here's the first Sunday of Season of Creation for this year. It's actually called Ocean Sunday in the resources. We expanded it to make it Ocean and Lake Sunday, because here in the Midwest, we don't have a whole lot of oceans nearby, but we are familiar with large bodies of water that actually do affect our weather patterns, like Lake Michigan, Lake Superior, and so on. And so we have resources, preaching resources, as well as hymn resources, and all kinds of other suggestions for each of the Sundays of the year. So if you move down, you'll see here's fruits for preaching. This is illustrations and stuff that preachers can use or teachers can use. There's some other ideas to do during the season. Oh, back up to that chart there.
That one?
Nope. That's
The chart.
the chart there, that one.
Sure.
Here's the suggestions for hymns for Ocean and Lake Sunday, all of which are from our Lutheran resources or resources that we provide for you. The ELW, the All Creation Sings, the new one. We didn't use With One Voice as much this year, but you'll see one down there called Hobble Hymns, and that's provided with materials. All of this is easily downloadable. In addition to this booklet, which is about 40 or 50 pages long, I forget how long it is, there are bulletin covers and celebrate type inserts that you can use if you use those at your church. There are all the photographs that are in there are available to you to use on your PowerPoints and so on. And all that stuff is available to make Season of Creation something very accessible. I have found that it. Oh, what?
Did you take all of those pictures?
Vast majority of them.
And there's the link also. If anybody wants to just bring it up immediately, you'll see it there too.
Just one last comment, because I don't want to take up all our time and have time for questions. I have found that bringing it up in worship leads to all kinds of conversations, all kinds of other activities, and enthuses people to enter into both advocacy and action. People actually, finding things to clean up, changing their habits, writing their Congress people, and considering that. So it has been truly a gift, and I hope that we can go forward as a church and do this more. One of my missions as I go forward before retirement is to make sure the ELCA is on the forefront of making sure that creation is part of our worship life and our community life, caring for it. And our committee, by the way, is called the CCC, Creation Care Committee. That's the Synod committee. Green team.
Green team. Thank you so much. Thank you to both of you. If visually, if everybody can give applause to both of our speakers, I just thank you so much for joining. And I thank those of you who were able to register ahead of time and had questions. I'm sure more have come up, but I'm going to give precedence to those who thought of them ahead of time. So I believe to both of you, the first one you might have kind of covered, but from Andrew in Texas, he had asked, I've noticed an emphasis on spirituality related to the land and nature in small rural towns in Texas. How do we build on that spirituality for formation and mission? And I think all of your resources answer that, Jeff. Lisa, do you also?
I guess that is a question that would require a lot more thinking. I mean, I'm not prepared to answer it off the cuff because as a person who aligns very closely with ethics and the slow thinking that goes into it, that also means that my thinking about answering things like that is slow. I'll probably have a great answer tomorrow after I thought about it.
And you'll
Also, I need to see the words in front of me in order to consider them. So are the words written down other than on the email I can't get to?
Yes, yes. I will make sure you can get in touch with Andrew. Andrew, I don't think is even on the call, so you can have a conversation with him
Oh, there we go.
via email.
I appreciated the question, though. I did read that quickly beforehand, and I did appreciate the question. Small towns everywhere are, and the churches that are represented in them, definitely, they don't think of spirituality as a separate thing. It's incorporated into their life. Making people more aware of the ways in which that is true is probably a start anyway.
I did see that question ahead of time, and I would venture to say that one of the ways to cement that spirituality is to actually enter into an exercise like Lisa is suggesting and develop whether you call it a land ethic or a creation ethic or whatever you want to call it, but one that actually defines some of the things that we're going to do, but they leave them vague enough so that you can have freedom to it. So such as we are going to have creation focused worship, but you don't have to say we're going to do season of creation every year from September, the first 4 Sundays in September or whatever. That we are going to have meetings where we pray for creation. You don't have to be specific about it, but when you have written it down and said, we're going to do this stuff, you'll do it. I think you can create spaces so that you can slow down and listen. I would love to have a quarterly gathering where we bring people together and we pray. We look over the magazines and newspapers and YouTube and whatever other news sites and say, what issues are we concerned about creation? Let's lift those up before God and let's bring them before the congregation and see where it takes us. Slow down and pay attention, and to put some of those down. I think we can all learn from what Lisa said to think about the ethic that's for us, and her principles are just great. And so I'm just gonna stop there. So.
And I think you're highlighting starting with prayer actually starts to answer the next question that had come in, was simply, what's your formula for getting the dialogue started? And I heard that a lot in what Jeff had to say, was starting with worship. And then I also see that another question in the chat was, do you raise the topic of climate change in your rural congregation? And I hear that Jeff starts it as part of worship, not necessarily using the word climate change. Lisa, what else have you also experienced using particular words?
This is, I definitely think in every way that you can make it part of worship. Don't ever see that talking about creation or creation stewardship, care, a land ethic, whatever you want to call it. I mean, there are many terms that we could use, but don't make it as something separate. It's not a separate category of anything. It is actually the very foundation of everything. And as our response to God and God's gift of creation. And so, but I do have a slide that I didn't get to, and I'm not going to share it because I'll send a link that you can send out later to the whole thing. But Phoebe had mentioned this, and she heard me refer to it several times in our classes, I think. It's a poem by Emily Dickinson, who I saw was also on Jeff's list or in the materials that you had there. But this is tell all the truth, but tell it slant. And I'll read the whole poem. Tell all the truth, but tell it slant. Success in circuit lies. Too bright for our infirm delight, the truth's superb surprise. As lightning to the children eased with explanation kind, the truth must dazzle gradually, or every man be blind. As I was writing it down again for my presentation, I noticed that the words circuit, delight, truths, lightning, children, and again, truth, were all capitalized, and nothing else besides the beginning of each line. And I started thinking, well, these are like God words, words and ideas about the Holy Spirit moving in and through us. And then also it made me think about Jesus telling it slant more than not in the Beatitudes, prophecies that were made, and particularly the parables. Those, I mean, we're still trying to figure those out, and will remain doing so into infinity, I'm sure. All Jesus' words were told at a slant, and truths that still dazzle us gradually so that we keep after it, so that we're still enthralled to the word. This also you need to keep in mind when talking about difficult subjects, or subjects that could be in people's daily lives quite politicized, and they just want to shy away from them because, for one thing, they don't want to be arguing with each other, especially in church, especially before or after worship. They don't want to be doing that. The other thing that I would give advice for talking about climate change, or however you frame it, always affirm where people are at first before you do anything else. You want them to feel like they are already part of what is good about what's going on, because it's true in rural areas anyway. I experience those people are the original stewards of land. You have to be you have to care for the creation that's around you, because your economic life depends upon it, and the life of your neighbors, and the health of the land. Everything else depends on it. It's all tied together, and people are already doing more or less as much as they can. Do they still need to have it incorporated into worship? Yes. And thank you, Jeff, for all that for spearheading that wonderful resource. I can't wait to dig into it. And incorporated everywhere. Just make it the common topic of conversation, just like the weather and the unfortunate realities of climate change. I guess that was a long answer.
I do have to say, in rural and small towns, I find it very easy to engage people in the conversations. As long as you are authentic and let them know where you're at. Nobody's surprised when I ask them about the environment. As long as your advice on making sure that you affirm where they're at is very important. I've had many conversations with farmers about the future of farming and practices, but they always start by me asking them about their farmland and how they're doing it and what they're doing and showing it. And I am interested in that stuff. I don't know it all. I don't pretend like I know it all. And I pretend the opener is, well, what do you think about this idea in the future that, you're all going to have electric combines that you run with a computer back at your home while they're going out and doing their thing. And sometimes they go crazy about it, but we're just having a conversation. They're not yelling at me, and they're very healthy conversations, in very good ways. And I find it very easy. They also, in small town and rural congregations, they don't do the I'm gonna pick up my toys and leave and go to another congregation thing.
Right.
That means going across 3 counties,
Right.
or going to one of them their other denominations, which they're not interested in doing. They'll endure you more than you'll endure them. They know eventually you'll go, even if it's 15 years from now, they'll still be here, and they're fine with that. And they're fine engaging you in that. It's just a wonderful place to have those conversations, and they do change, because change happens all the time in rural areas. It doesn't happen fast, but they sit, they stop and do exactly what Lisa said. They think it through, you know, and if you want them to change from one to the other, it might take 5 years before they change to an electric combine, if that's where we're going on something. But boy, I can't believe the number of solar panels I've seen in farmyards, you know, around here.
But it's not necessarily because they are on a bandwagon necessarily.
No, but they are deeply in love with and concerned about the land. They are. And that is, it is rooted in, they love saving money, and so do we all. You know, that's our capitalistic problem. But they're deeply rooted in what's good for the land. Because it's a lifestyle to them. Farming is a lifestyle. It's harder to talk to a corporate farmer who lives in town and comes out and works the land. That's a whole lot harder than somebody who lives on it.
Mm-hmm. And I wanted to just lift up, we'll probably only have time for this one other question, but Doug Jacobson is on the call right now and wrote this question that I don't think we'll get to answer, but I think we all need to continue to think about and that you're bringing up here. So he writes suggestions for honoring the work of parents and, oh, sorry, hold on, wait a minute. Sorry, Sue, that was yours. Hopefully we'll get to that, at least on, oh, where did it go? Okay, here we go. From Doug, here we go. Regenerative agriculture seems to be the popular topic for many non-rural climate activists. And as a social justice activist and former large-scale traditional agriculturist and livestock producer, I find the concept attractive, but also impractical on a large scale. I have been unable to find a regenerative agricultural operation of sufficient capacity to be economically viable without off-farm income. Are there examples of regenerative agriculture operations that are economically able to support themselves without off-farm income? And I think in general, the question is too, how can we as church help the narrative not be about one or the other? As Jeff was pointing out, there are all these in-betweens, and how we as church can help the conversations happen beyond the headlines and beyond the quick memes. What is our role? And I think you're both exemplifying that. But I think you also exemplify the fact that it has to happen in context, not necessarily from climate justice advocates outside of the context. So how do we build climate justice advocates in the context?
I have a lot of thoughts, but that I will have to respond in a different, separately about regenerative agriculture, because I actually do have quite a bit to say about that. But what occurs to me in what Jeff answered and somewhat in the questions, and the thing that I left off, my slide about developing a theological land ethic, I don't know, it was like so obvious that I forgot it, is it's relationship centered also. Everything that we do, if we're going to try to convince anyone, needs to be centered on the relationships first, the human relationships. I mean, yes, of course, our relationship to the land, to the creation as a whole, all of those things, but it's really important to be in relationship with people like Jeff is with his congregations. And I've always kind of envied that the pastor can leave, because there are many times, many of us would probably like to at least get away from the community for a while. And actually I've been away for 6-7 years, but that doesn't mean I'm not still completely involved in many ways. But it's the relationships that you need to maintain above all, because you can't convince anyone of change or even present the idea of perhaps upgrading our ideas about caring for the land unless you are first in a relationship. Outside experts, outside climate change advocates, no, they're not going to go really anywhere. That's not going to happen. It has to be from within. And there are people out there, many of them, who have the right kinds of sensibilities, or the kinds of sensibilities that we're talking about that we value.
Man, thank you. And to your point too about wanting to answer more of these questions, we have your emails. I see that we're coming to the end of the hour, and I want to make room to close us in prayer. So know that if you shared your email address and a specific question, I'll make sure Lisa and Jeff get those questions, and I'll prod them to make sure that they stay in touch with you, and add your question with your email to the chat if it didn't come up tonight. That being said, I would like to again thank Lisa and Jeff. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I hope you come back around again, because I think we'll have more, can dive deeper. And right now I want to welcome Ashley Procanon, who's calling in from Colorado, right? Colorado. Yes. And I happen to know that she's been exhausted by young people for weeks now, right? At summer camp, outdoor ministry camp.
Yep, we're on week 7 of 10.
Yay. So I just really appreciate that Ashley was willing to share a closing prayer with us tonight. And I also want to just say that I was able to get to know her also from the Certificate in Climate Justice and Faith program. And I'm so happy to know that people like her are working with our youth, and for their sake and for her sake. I'm glad that she's out there. So I will hand it over to you, Ashley. Thank you.
I gotta say hi, Ashley. Glad to see you.
It's nice to see you. So hi, everyone. I found this prayer from the Eco Congregation of Ireland, and I wanted to share it with you all tonight because it's one of my favorites, and it was written by Fiona Murdoch, and it's called A Prayer of Gratitude for Creation. So please pray with me as you feel most called. God of the universe, we thank you for your many good gifts, for the beauty of creation and its rich and varied fruits, for clean water and fresh air, for food and shelter, animals and plants. Forgive us for the times that we have taken the earth's resources for granted and wasted what you have given us. Transform our hearts and minds so that we would learn to care and share, to touch the earth with gentleness and love, respecting all living things. We pray for all those who suffer as a result of our waste, greed, and indifference. And we pray that the day would come when everyone has enough food and clean water. Help us to respect the rights of all peoples and all species, and help us to willingly share your gifts today and always. In your holy name, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you all. That was wonderful. Thank you so much. Good night. Be well. We will see you next month. A little bit more hands-on stuff next month. Look on your emails. Have a wonderful time in the summertime, but also be careful out there. Drink lots of water. Amen. Good night, all.